Title: At my evaluation meeting, my wife's father, the CEO, said coldly, "We're letting you go. Performance issues." When I got home, my wife handed me a brochure for a homeless shelter and said, "Now that you're jobless, I don't need you anymore." I left silently. A week later, she and her father called me 193 times after realizing who I really was. Chapter 1: The Performance Review. I walked into the boardroom 15 minutes early, clutching my performance review folder and a coffee I barely touched. The tension in my chest wasn't from nerves, it was something colder. A shift I couldn't yet name, but felt deep in my gut. 3 years. That's how long I had worked at Cinterix Technologies. I started as a mid-level strategist and rose quickly, faster than most, thanks to long nights and airtight results. My wife's father, Mr. Richard Ellsworth, was the CEO, though he rarely acknowledged me outside company formalities. Our relationship was frigid at best, but I never asked for handouts. I earned my promotions on merit, or so I thought. The conference room was glossy and sterile, mahogany table, chrome chairs, and at the head of the table sat Richard, flanked by HR and 2 board members I didn't recognize. No smiles, no greetings, just that cold nod. "Take a seat," Richard said, flipping open a file without looking at me. I sat. "We'll make this quick," he continued. "After reviewing your last quarter, we've identified a series of performance issues. Missed objectives, budget inefficiencies, lack of innovation." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "We're letting you go," he said, emotionless. "Effective immediately." A silence hung in the air so thick it nearly choked me. I glanced toward the HR director, who avoided eye contact. One of the board members sighed, clearly uncomfortable. I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it, because I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about performance. It was personal. Richard's gaze locked on mine, sharp and satisfied. "You married my daughter. That bought you some goodwill. But goodwill doesn't excuse mediocrity." He slid a termination letter across the table. "Security will escort you out." I stared at the paper. My hands didn't move. Inside, my mind wasn't screaming. It was calculating. Something subtle and irreversible had just snapped, not because I lost my job, but because I saw the smirk behind his eyes, the smirk that said, "You were never one of us." I stood slowly, adjusted my cuffs. "Thank you for the clarity," I said, my voice steady. "I won't be needing security." I walked out without touching the letter, but I wasn't going home defeated. I was going home to face my wife, and to start something they never expected. Chapter 2: The Brochure. The silence of the house greeted me when I got home that evening, cold, hollow, and unwelcoming. For years I'd imagined coming home to warmth, maybe a hug, maybe concern. But tonight the air felt like it belonged to someone else. My wife, Natalie, sat at the kitchen island sipping wine from a glass that probably cost more than the meal I skipped at lunch. She didn't even look up when I entered. Just a casual, "You're home early." "Yeah," I said quietly, setting down my briefcase. The company decided to restructure. That got her attention. She looked up, not with worry, but with the kind of curiosity one has when watching a stranger drop a glass. "Wait," she said, lips curling. "You got fired?" I didn't answer. Her smirk widened. "I told Dad you were getting too comfortable. You should have taken his advice." My chest tightened. I wanted to ask, "You knew?" But something in her tone told me everything. She'd known. She'd probably helped plan it. She swirled her wine lazily, then reached into her designer tote and slid a folded brochure across the counter. "Here," she said coolly. "I figured you might need this." I unfolded it. A local homeless shelter. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. Her words landed like ice shards. "Now that you're jobless, I don't need you anymore." There it was, the final confirmation. The years of sacrifice, of carrying her through graduate school, of funding her startup ideas, the late nights, the steady loyalty, all reduced to a brochure and a smirk. I stood there, staring at her, feeling the room tilt slightly. But I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. Instead, I said softly, "Thank you, Natalie. You've made things much clearer." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to beg?" "No," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I don't beg. I just adjust." Her laugh followed me down the hallway as I went to pack my things. "Adjust all you want, Liam. But this is our house. Don't take anything that doesn't belong to you." I paused in the doorway of our bedroom, taking one last look at the space where my life used to be. Her reflection in the mirror smiled, sharp, satisfied. But she didn't know what I was thinking, that this house never really belonged to her, that the company she and her father ran didn't either, and that the man they thought they broke was only just beginning to rise. Chapter 3. The Silence Before the Storm. I left that night with a small suitcase and my dignity intact. No fights, no threats, no grand declarations. But in my silence, I had started a war. Natalie thought I had nowhere to go, that I was finished. What she didn't know was that I had prepared for this moment from the very beginning. 3 years ago, a hidden identity. When I married Natalie, her father insisted I work my way up in the company. He gave me a low-level role, IT support. He didn't know I was the quiet investor behind one of the tech startups Grainger Dynamics later acquired for millions. He didn't know that I held dual degrees, one in cybersecurity, the other in finance. He didn't know I'd already sold 2 SaaS companies, anonymously, and walked away with more than $14 million before I turned 32. He thought I was a humble tech guy who married up, and that's exactly how I wanted it. The backup plan. I moved into a quiet rental the next day, paid in full for 6 months. Natalie sent no texts, no calls. She assumed I'd crawl back, that I'd beg her father for a second chance. Instead, I spent that week activating the contingency plan I'd drafted a year into our marriage. Call it paranoia. Call it instinct. I called it survival. Unraveling their world. Step 1. Freeze the joint credit cards. Step 2. Revoke access to the emergency trust fund Natalie didn't know I had set up in my name only. Step 3. Begin slowly offloading my silent shares in Grainger Dynamics, the ones I held through a private shell company registered in Singapore. Because here's what Richard Grainger never realized. When his company acquired CoreSys AI, that tiny startup with cutting-edge threat detection tech, he thought he scored a cheap win. He didn't know the creator and majority stakeholder was me, and he signed over 12% of Grainger Dynamics to me without blinking. The phone begins to ring. On the 7th day of my disappearance, my phone buzzed. It was Natalie, then Richard, then both, again and again. 193 missed calls by the end of the day, because someone from the board had discovered the true owner of the now vacant shares being sold. And that person had just refused to renew the licensing rights that powered Grainger's newest government contract. Millions were at stake. Natalie's voice trembled on the voicemail. "Liam, please, we need to talk." But I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't done. Chapter 4. The Boardroom Betrayal. By the time Richard Grainger realized what was happening, it was already too late. He stormed into the boardroom at Grainger Dynamics like a man possessed, red-faced, shouting into his phone, flanked by a few of his yes-men, the same ones who used to snicker behind my back. But this time, they weren't laughing. Because the name on the schedule that morning, the name that had every shareholder seated promptly at 9 a.m., was mine, Liam Carter, listed as primary stakeholder and former strategic director of CoreSys AI, and I wasn't there to ask for anything. "Mr. Grainger, you're in my seat." I stood at the head of the table, calm, pressed suit, folder in hand. Richard froze as if he'd seen a ghost. The board looked between us, confused, until one of the older members, Catherine Lowell, cleared her throat. "Richard, The shares he sold back were Class B, the Class A voting shares, still active, and majority held his jaw dropped, because he finally understood. While he had focused on numbers and titles, I had focused on leverage. He fired the man who could dismantle his company with a signature. The first move. I opened the folder. Item 1, I began, sliding a document across the table. Grainger Dynamics dependency on Corsys threat detection software exceeds 70%. As of midnight, that license expired. Gasps filled the room. Item 2. Richard Grainger failed to disclose that his daughter, Natalie, directly profited from the illegal repackaging and resale of proprietary software code. Eyes snapped toward him. Natalie had been skimming profits from side contracts, all routed through dummy accounts. Evidence? Already sent to the board in sealed emails. No more masks. Richard's voice cracked. You used us. I smiled, finally letting it show. You used me first. Dismissed me, mocked me, replaced me. I leaned forward. I didn't lose control. I gave it up just long enough to see how far you'd fall on your own. The board called a vote. Within 15 minutes, Richard Grainger was suspended pending investigation. The same day, Natalie was served with a subpoena for digital fraud and breach of intellectual property. And me? I was offered the role of Chief Technology Officer. I declined. I didn't come back to run your company. I came to remind you who built its future, while you were too busy trying to erase mine. Chapter 5. The Price of Betrayal. The news spread like wildfire. Grainger Dynamics stock plummeted within 48 hours of the board meeting. Tech forums and business news outlets began piecing together the puzzle. A massive internal fraud scheme, expired licenses, and a public power shift that left industry veterans stunned. But nothing was more brutal than what came next, not in boardrooms or headlines, but in the quiet fallout that tore personal lives apart. Natalie's fall from grace. Natalie's social media, once a gallery of curated luxury, vanished overnight. Sponsors dropped her. Friends distanced themselves. Her influencer deals dried up like spilled perfume. Even her mother, who had once proudly paraded her as the Grainger heiress, refused to answer her calls. Then came the civil lawsuit, filed by shareholders who had unknowingly invested during the peak of her financial misconduct. She reached out to me through a private message. Liam, please, tell them I wasn't the only one. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't respond. Because it wasn't just about her choices. It was about how easily she discarded the man who had built a life beside her. Richard's legacy dismantled. The Grainger name, once synonymous with prestige, became a case study in corporate arrogance. Richard tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, but the digital trail was undeniable. And in a final act of poetic justice, the Department of Justice opened a formal investigation into past government contracts awarded to Grainger Dynamics during Richard's tenure. Contracts I had originally negotiated. Turns out, they'd altered vendor records after I left. A federal audit was the nail in the coffin. My final move. I donated a portion of my settlement from the shareholder litigation to a scholarship fund, one focused on helping first-generation engineers and programmers. The fund was named after someone who had always believed in me, the Thomas Carter Initiative, after my late father, a carpenter who never learned to code but always told me I could build anything. I didn't need the fame, the credit, or the revenge to be loud. I just needed it to be complete. Natalie's message, weeks later. A voicemail, tearful and cracked. You never yelled. You never hit back. You just vanished. And that hurts more than anything. You were the real one, Liam. I see that now. I wish I had seen it before everything fell apart. I sat in my new office, not at Grainger Dynamics, but in a small startup I'd quietly invested in years ago. A place where the people were humble, the mission was real, and my name actually mattered. I didn't call back. Some lessons aren't meant to be shared. They're meant to be felt. Epilogue. The power of quiet revenge. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a storm, not of peace, but of realization. Natalie and Richard had built their identities on appearances, polished dinners, luxury brands, boardroom prestige, and the illusion of control. They believed power came from dominance, from stepping on others to elevate themselves. But what they never understood is that real power doesn't scream, it plans. What they lost. Natalie now works a mid-level job at a digital marketing firm, trying to rebuild a reputation that was shattered by betrayal and scandal. She drives a used sedan and rents a modest apartment, a far cry from her designer penthouse days. Richard retired early, not by choice. His name now lives on in legal case studies, a cautionary tale in MBA ethics courses. His so-called legacy erased with every new article about his corporate downfall. Their social circle? Gone. Their influence? Vaporized. Their pride? Turned to ash. What I gained. I didn't just regain my career, I reclaimed my dignity. I now mentor young engineers, invest in ethical startups, and quietly fund community tech programs that help underserved youth break into the world of innovation. I found purpose, not just profit, and most of all, I found peace in knowing I never had to become cruel to win. The lesson. If someone tries to dim your light so theirs shines brighter, let them. Then build a bonfire with every bridge they burned, and let them watch from the cold, because nothing haunts the selfish more than watching the one they betrayed thrive without them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's letting them destroy themselves while you rise. And rise I did. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire. Subscribe to Lauren's story, because here, betrayals don't sleep. They hunt their owners. Every shadow hides a reckoning, every mask breaks, and every betrayal is answered. Stay sharp, stay unbroken, stay tuned.